Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining our session today on the Microsoft Wave 2, which we'll explain in a minute. We're just going to give ourselves another maybe 30 seconds just to allow a few more attendees to join us, and then we'll get started. Good morning to those that have just joined us. We're going to give this a few more seconds to wait for a few extra attendees, and then we'll get kicked off. Okay, let's move ahead. All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking the time this morning to join us on this overview of the latest and greatest from Microsoft in relation to specifically today the Dynamics 365 CRM platform that we all know and love, along with some of the Power Platform changes that have come down from Microsoft as well. Some of you probably are aware of this, but again, it's just maybe helpful to reiterate maybe for some of the newer people, but Microsoft does make two major updates available each year across the Dynamics platform. Sorry, just go back, James, sorry, one sec.
Sorry.
So those two major updates are released in April and in October. And it's this October release that we're going to focus on today. As well as these two major releases, then there are minor releases pushed out throughout the course of the year. Sometimes you don't even know it, but it does happen in the background. James, now, if you don't mind. So here today.
And just to clarify on Daryl's comment there, even though it's two releases a year, they're very much phased now. So the Wave 2 release starts in October, but finishes in March. So stuff I'm going to be showing you today might come out any time between October and March, and every feature has its own release date.
Okay, thanks, James.
Sure.
Okay, so look, at this stage, you probably guessed it's myself, Daryl Brislane, who is doing the talking here, just really topping and tailing this presentation, helping James with some of the things that he's going to be showing. And then, of course, James Glover. Most of you know James, head of our solutions architecture. And he will be doing pretty much all the heavy lifting, showing you what is new, ably assisted by his Chief Happiness Officer, who I believe you'll see an awful lot across today's presentation. Am I right there, James?
It's just allowing in case she barks in the background, so she's part of the call now. So
right, okay. I'll have her introduce herself. Okay, and then James, if you don't mind, just on to the next slide. So look, this is what James is going to be focused on really today. As James, as I mentioned, it's two releases a year across the Dynamics platform. Now, look, we're of course primarily interested in what we call Dynamics 365 Sales, because that's the set of licenses that the majority of our customers have in place. So the majority of people here on this call today have Dynamics 365 Sales customer licenses in place. But as part of this release, Microsoft does bring new capability across to all its Dynamics components. So that in the CRM space, that's also customer service, field service, professional services. More importantly, though, for again this audience, the Power Platform environment. So the Power Platform, of course, is things like Power BI, which the majority of you will know and love. Power Automate, which is, of course, primarily the workflow. And then Power Apps, which is really the logic, the low-code, no-code logic that's available within the solution to kind of allow us to tailor Dynamics CRM sales in this case further, so that we can do unique work for your organization using Power Apps. So in each of these releases, Microsoft does bring new capability to that Power Platform space as well as Dynamics. And as James mentioned, look, you don't see it all coming out tumbling into your CRM environment in October. It is spread out over the course of the year. On that, actually, Microsoft does start making that information available as to what's going to be in this new release. They do call those releases waves. They do start around 2 months or maybe 3 months prior. So for this October release, Microsoft started publishing what's going to be in it back in July 12. So we start to see what will be released in really between now, October and March, back in July. So we do get to kind of get a preview, understand what's coming down, and then allow ourselves to prepare for these kind of presentations. So look, that's really it. That's just setting the scene, what we're going to do today. I'll come back in again later on when we talk about some other events that are due over the next few months. But really, James this is his high level agenda in terms of the components that he wants to focus in on. What he does focus in on, like I said, it's only a partial overview. There's an awful lot more. If anybody wants to hit the documents, read the documents, they're more than welcome to do so. We'll focus in on what we feel is the most relevant and most important. James, over to you.
And just to clarify, we're starting off with Power Platform for the first 20 minutes, and then we'll dip into some solely Dynamics 365 features. So we're breaking the session into two today, just to give ourselves a bit of flexibility in how we do it. So the plan is to show you as much as possible, but a lot of this isn't quite out yet. So it's going to be what we can and can't show you. So just to kind of get in there, so some stuff, hopefully we can kind of show you in a working state. So let's start off with kind of Power Pages. So Power Pages, just to introduce everybody, is the new brand name for Power Portals, and it's going to be same look and style. Power Portals is still going to exist, but Power Pages is far more of a what you see is what you get development environment. So effectively, we are downskilling the type of person who needs to be involved to build out this functionality. Before, there was a level of geekiness within Power Portals. Now, effectively, changing styles, dragging in pictures, it's going to be far easier, to the point now that if you wanted to spin up a microsite and kind of play with that functionality, that's going to become a lot easier to do in the future. And actually, I've got Power Pages open over one of these tabs here. There you go. So effectively, this is going to become a lot easier, to the point now where literally I could click plus, pick my page layout, and literally it is going to be kind of drag and drop. I can do this, I can add contact. So it's almost a hybrid between anybody who's used to creating email templates and anybody who's kind of used to doing digital marketing can now build websites. So it's going to be very simple in that context to kind of build out additional information. So if you wanted like a couple of pages created about a particular event, that's going to be a lot easier within the Power Pages functionality. So that's kind of where it's really kind of, that's where it's really kind of coming from. It's let's get to the right bit of PowerPoint. It's going to mess with me all day now, isn't it, Darryl? Not maximizing and minimizing. Okay, so the next area
is that the old Power Portal, what previously called?
Yes, it's an update to Power Portals. Power Portals are very much resident, but now in about 2 months' time, you'll be able to create Power Pages, which is a different design style. That's all it is. It's an improvement. Yeah, it's an improvement to the look and feel, to the design aspect. At the moment, we believe you might have to start with Power Pages, and we don't know whether the designer is going to retrospectively go over old content. So if you're spinning a new portal up in a couple of months, we'd go Power Pages, but you're not going to get that switch of designer experience straight away.
Okay.
So next area I want to discuss is they're making a number of improvements around grid controls, and they're doing this in a few different ways. So one is look and feel editing, and one is subgrids. So we'll start off with kind of the basic grid controls and kind of work through from there to show you what you're getting. So again, just walking into the product just to give you an idea. So if I open my opportunity grid here, what you're seeing here is a much more kind of cleaner environment where effectively we can see conditional formatting, we can see labeling. So anything that's an option set, anything that's a Boolean, we can now define a color coding scheme behind it to give you a much more richer interface in terms of maybe an income line that's failed to process, or maybe something that's pending. We can do that in terms of color schemes and all the option sets to give us a bit more functionality. But where it gets quite interesting is if I just go to here and go to this grid, is the editable grid now is far more usable. So if we want to go to a fully editable grid, actually it's a much richer interface in terms of picking dates, the date controllers, all this sort of stuff. It's just a nicer experience. Yeah. So I can just start doing type ahead, all that sort of stuff just behaves itself quite nicely. So again, it's just a different style of how you do the editable grid. But where the editable grid's getting really quite interesting now is we've now got a hybrid, which has actually gone live already, a hybrid editable grid with a subgrid. So let me just peel that back a bit and explain that. So if I kind of go to an event in my system here as a good example, I'm just going to open an event that I did some setup for yesterday, just as an example. So I've got an event here and I've got a series of participants, nothing fancy here, but what you'll notice now is actually this top line can be editable, and I've defined which fields can and can't be edited, but I can now expand within the grid and see the related records to that primary record. So effectively I could be looking at all of my event participants and expand that particular row and then see all the income that's come in against that participant record. So again, it's just a nicer way of visually seeing it without having to drive through lots and lots of forms. So it just gives us another angle.
And James, is that sub or child record, is that editable at this point too?
No, so it's only the header that's editable. You can't edit the child.
The child.
Oh no, sorry, you can.
Oh,
I did change that, yeah. Yeah, sorry, you're right, Daryl. So all of them are editable at all levels.
So the mark editable is what the red dot?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that in our live environment yet?
No, I haven't given you actually, Daryl. You haven't got time to play with that one yet.
Come on.
So
can
again,
I just say, right?
It does help massively. Like normally, pre this change, you would have been opening one form, making an edit, finding the subgrid, opening the relating record, making an edit. The amount of clicks it's reduced is quite powerful.
No, I can see that, because I mean, in our world, that makes an awful lot of sense. And let's get that live pretty quick, James. I noticed you put the color scheme, the going back there a couple of screens where you've got the nice colors. Just so everybody knows, James put that live in our system, and the amount of red that met me one day coming in nearly gave me a heart attack.
Yeah, and so I've just noticed a question come in on the editable grids in the side chat just while we're going through, and that was regarding the alphabet. And yes, you can now optionally turn it on. So against here, I have optionally turned on the lettering at the bottom. So part of this new grid control gives us the ability to re-enable the old-fashioned navigation that apparently everybody loved when it was gone, but nobody cared for it when it was there. It's probably the best way to describe it. So Microsoft reversed their decision and kind of did that.
And sorry, James, just show where you turned that on.
It's actually in the development environment. I'm not going to go geeky on everybody today and show them that. Yeah. And then another question on the coloring. The coloring is set by the systems administrators. It's set as part of configuration. Okay. So let's kind of go back into here. And then what we're going to be talking about now is PowerFX. And I'm only going to cover lightly on this because it's growing all the time. So if anybody's ever played with Power Apps, PowerFX has been the language behind Power Apps for a number of years now. But effectively what it gives is it gives us a low code, no code decorative language, a bit like writing an Excel formula. That means we can write our own buttons that do nice things. Yeah. So an example being here is I've simply created a gift aid declaration button just as an example. And we can do all that within the modern designer. So again, if I just dip back into a system and show where this has become useful. So if I just go to a contact record in my particular environment here, it could be any particular contact, just one that I've created and had a play with. This is fundraising engagement, not F&E, but it's just I'm playing at the moment with some sample data. But the reason why it's interesting is that tax relief button is all done in PowerFX. I've not had to write any JavaScript. I've not had to download any third-party tools to add a button into the ribbon. And simply with a single click here, I could say I'm on the phone with somebody and they're just giving me a verbal GAD. At that context, I don't need to go into that record because it's a verbal GAD. I'm on the person's record. It's happening in the now. So there's no point in forcing me to navigate away to a page, forcing me to fill it in, because actually I know the content. Oh, I clicked on the wrong record there. I know the context, so I could just create it all manually in one hit. So again, we don't, areas like that where we can just do that level of, actually, I just want to approve a record. I just want to change these 10 fields or give it to somebody else. That's where PowerFX can have a big improvement in terms of UI. Okay. Next area is around notifications. So this started to come out in wave 1, but now it's fully live and out of preview. And the nice thing is with notifications is it's fully configurable, as in you can define all of your rules, and these notifications are created in Power Automate. So anybody with basic Power Automate skills can generate pop-up notifications that appear as things are happening. So it could be you've just, a major donor's just given you £250,000 and you want to tell everybody in CRM with like a pop-up notification how amazing it is, the equivalent of like ringing a bell when you've won a sales order in the office. Or it could be you've got a critical case come in and you want to notify a subset of people in the support team that we need to jump on it. So it's a big improvement over mass sending emails and mass sending bits and bobs. And the nice thing with notifications is they are self-cleaning. When you create a notification, you define how long that persists in the notification table. So it's not like you're building up this big ugly backlog of rogue records that need cleaning up over time. They'll naturally clean up as they go. Okay, so next I want to talk about, again, which is really quite nice, is custom pages. So I'm just going to go to the screen, then we'll dip into the products and actually have a look. So what are custom pages? So if anyone's played with Power Apps, a custom page is a one-page Power App that's solution aware. But what that means is it can be embedded in the navigation, within a form, or as a pop-up, or as a side panel. So if we want to surface some information from another system or interact with another system, custom pages give us a really good bit of flexibility to do that. And by default now, they are fully reactive. One of the issues in embedding Canvas apps has always been they didn't size particularly well. They sometimes went a bit squiffy if you had a small monitor than a really large monitor. By having this flexibility means now that if I just come back into my browser and go to here, who's in the office, we can build these custom pages that again allow you to interact with the data. So I could say, actually, this is like a sign-in sheet for somebody attending an office. So I could say, actually, this, but my visitors just left. I could just toggle that and just flag them, and just those sort of aspects. Again, there's different use cases. It could be various things that's going on within the system, but it gives you a different design flair in terms of how you're building out functionality. And it just means you can do other things that are slightly funkier, slightly more interesting as you're kind of going through the process. Okay, custom pages. Next thing I can't show you yet because I haven't had time to get it working. So we've had oh, I've got the wrong title there. I do apologize. We've had virtual entities for probably 5 years now, but it was always a little bit geeky to get working. As part of this wave release, it's currently in preview and it should be out of preview very soon, is we have custom pre-built connectors for a few different sources. So what I mean by that is you can go to the App Store, download the connector and actually display SQL data, Excel data, SharePoint data as if it's a table and as if it has a form in CRM. So rather than doing a full data migration of some like legacy notes, like we quite often end up creating like a table called like legacy actions or something of things that went on for the last 30 years. Now that data could reside in an old SQL store somewhere or or massive Excel sheet, or even SharePoint, and we can make it look and smell like CRM and display like CRM. It is read-only, but it means we can embed that as part of the UI. Okay. Next one, I have got the correct title. So I've showed a bunch of people on this call before, but again, the Power BI is now gone GA, and this gives people a nice ability to do ad hoc Power BI reporting, and this is improving all the time. So what I mean by this is, if I just come back into here and probably go to opportunities, just so I've got a bit of data. Sorry. Everywhere throughout the system now, once it's turned on, you get visualize this view. And the nice thing with visualize this view is it removes the need for anybody understanding any of the plumbing. And it also means people can use Power BI free licenses and they don't need a pro license. So if a user just wants to go in and have a sniff around the data, understand it a bit, play with it, maybe build a pivot chart, they can do it all without having to purchase a Power BI license. And what it does, it's using an AI model to look at that view, work out the columns and work out potentially what you want to see. And again, you can tweak it, tailor it, save it as a report for yourself. But it means you don't need to understand the architecture of where the data is, how it was collected. It's doing all of that plumbing for you, and then just giving the ability of just visualizing, seeing that data set. So that is out to play with now.
James, just go back to your previous slide there. Simon's asked a question, the slide with the wrong header, the connector slide.
Yeah.
What was the header for that? Connections?
The header was,
go down to another,
it's virtual tables.
Oh, virtual tables,
yeah,
right.
It's virtual tables. So it's, again, really worth doing. And the interesting thing, as of this roadmap release, Dataverse can be one of the sources. So you could have, if you had multiple databases that are all a bunch of Power Apps databases, they could all show data from each other's databases. So again, giving us nice options there.
And pardon this layman question, where do you visualize this? Where do you see this? Like, now that you've got all these connectors pointing to these data sources, is that from within CRM? Like
yeah, they'll appear as tables and forms, just like CRM, but they'll be read-only.
Within the CRM admin section, or?
As far as an end user is concerned, it will look and smell like CRM.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and then the question is visualize this view on by default? No, it's not. You'll need to go into the app designer, advanced settings, and just tick a box. And that's the same for notifications. It's just in the app designer to turn it on. Okay. And we're getting close to the end of the Power Apps changes now. And this one isn't really CRM, but it's of interest to me, and it's of interest to a bunch of our clients in terms of how we build out Power BI reports. And it's not just Dynamics, this is any kind of Power BI report. It does require a Power BI premium per user license, which I think for non-profits is around £4 to £6 and commercials around £15 a month. But effectively, what a Power BI data mart is it gives us the equivalent of building a data warehouse that Microsoft hosts within the context of Power BI. So really, really geeky. I do apologize. Let me just go back into the product and show you what I mean. If I just go into Power BI and go into a data mart. Let me get to the data mart 1 second. If I just edit this data mart, I'll show you how it all hangs together. But effectively, think of it like, rather than writing 15, 20 different Power BI reports that are all grabbing the data from various sources, what the data mart is going to give us the ability of doing is create one central repository that Power BI is keeping up to date, and even relate the tables together. And then where it gets really, really fancy is if I just come in, I can't remember where the setting is now, Daryl, is this data mart will appear as a virtual SQL server. So you end up with a SQL server you're not having to pay for, that's hosted by Microsoft, that you could then consume in legacy products. So if you've got a bunch of legacy products that can only talk SQL, the data mart means we can expose CRM data or Business Central data or anything else cloud focused back into a more of a legacy reporting module. And the really, really nice thing is once it's in here, I can then start going back old school, writing SQL statements, all that sort of good stuff. So if SQL is my happy place, I can even come in here, write my own SQL statements, grab my data, and even then just click open in Excel. So it means we've kind of gone full circle. We started out with an on-prem SQL server, writing geeky SQL, sticking it in the cloud. Now we can create a data mart, which is a virtual SQL server, and we can write our own SQL statements again. So again, sorry, edge case, a little bit geeky, but I quite like it.
Well, just bring it back to CRM. Can that data then be brought into, be visualized in CRM within Dynamics 365?
I haven't got that far. I only started playing with it 2 weeks ago, Daryl. I'll know soon.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's data marts. And then finally, what you might have noticed as I've been going through a bunch of this stuff is the UI is going to change slightly in October, just a little bit, but it is changing just a little bit. So it's very, very subtle. Right, just to minimize this sidebar just so I can get to it. But what you notice, if I open, actually I'll use this one, I'll use this one here, is the form shadowing the lines are changing slightly. It shouldn't be enough to scare users, but every section now is shadowed rather than a hard line, and all of the activities actually have a minor box around them. So it's minor UX changes, and the reason behind it is we had actually 2 different UIs. If you were in a dashboard view in CRM, you might not have ever noticed it, but all dashboards were basically widgets with shadows. Yeah, so I'm just gonna let the dashboard load now. And all they've done is harmonize the look and feel across them. So for, oh God, that's a really broken dashboard in this system, isn't it? Open that one. So all we've basically done is harmonize the UX because we had a discrepancy. Dashboards have always been shadowed with a line. Forms were always hard borders, and the UX didn't quite marry up. So there's going to be mild UX changes just when October hits. But that is all it was. It was just mild changes. Okay. But what we're going to do, we're going to get onto the Dynamics 365 topics now.
Before you do, James, hold on. A few questions there, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think we missed one too from Michelle. Going back to the visualizing the data, that new option.
Yeah.
Does it take the column order into account when deciding what to show you?
Yes, it does, but you can then pick different columns, Michelle. So it knows what columns are in that view, and then you could just click on the other columns on the right-hand side and just change that Power BI to make it do what you want it to do. But it is very much ad hoc reporting. That's the best way to think about it.
Okay, and then Michelle then follows on. Will data marts, so your latest topic there, will data marts help with the large data sets where Power BI previously has struggled?
Yes, and that's part of the logic behind it, and that's part of the reason why it's on the premium per user SKU. Yeah?
That's the premium Power BI per user SKU?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so you have to up your level of Power BI.
It is, but now it's a per user cost. It's not as bad. 2 years ago, the only premium Power BI used to cost £4,000 a month. So we've gone from £4,000 a month to like £4 a user. So it's slightly more viable.
Okay. All right, a little out of left field here, Duncan. Do virtual changes work the other way? For example, can we simply show a Dynamics 365 view in a SharePoint page? Let's turn it upside down. Oh, virtual tables, sorry. Can we, hang on, what's it? Do virtual tables work the same way? Sorry, the other way. Do virtual tables work the other way? For example, can you simply show a Dynamics 365 view in a SharePoint page? So,
no, we can't, Duncan, at the moment. But annoyingly, topic 9 on this slide on my screen now won't work for me at the moment because it's too new and will not turn on properly. But in SharePoint, in the SharePoint search, it should be showing you CRM data if you want it to. So I can't do it natively in views in SharePoint, but we're soon going to get the ability to, when you're in SharePoint, display CRM data.
Okay, that's the
I'm
questions.
going to go back to full screen mode on this one, Daryl, just purely because a lot of the Dynamics 365 ones aren't quite there yet for me to show. I've only got a couple of these I can show. So the first one, is about case swarms. So what this is coming forward now, if you've got a very big help desk deployment, what you can do is define case swarm groups. And just bear with me, because it's so in the old days you basically define a queue and you'd let people pick off a queue. What a case swarm is going to do is dynamically look at everyone's skill sets that have been defined within CRM, and then if an urgent case comes in, it would automatically find the people with that skill set, automatically send them all a Teams notification saying, this has happened, can you help? And show them the context of the case. So it is literally that. It's a swarm of all hands on deck. This has happened. Who knows about it? And it's probably for more to do with much higher volume call centers, and it's not an area we typically deal with in a business. It's more like 30 plus agents where this would be really useful. Normally, you've got less than 10 people. Everybody knows what each of the skill sets are. But as you're getting bigger, the case swarm functionality is going to have some really nice native Teams integration to really trying to reach out and find somebody who knows what's going on. Okay. Again, not as important in our sectors we're currently dealing with the people on the call today, but for our business clients, we have a couple of business clients that run multiple trading brands, and even for a number of our charitable clients who have previously bought in and merged charities together, Dynamics Marketing is now going to support full multi-brand. So effectively, we could create 4 or 5 different businesses in one marketing solution, and it will automatically render the social links, all the consent links, all of the sender aliases based on that brand. So it does give us the ability of having sub-businesses all on one marketing solution. So again, it reduces the amount of knitting that needs to go on if you're a multi-brand based business. So it just helps it in terms of how we're doing it. And that's the big thing there. It's to give us that ability of having maybe 4 or 5 different trading names and kind of use a single marketing solution and make sure everything's always coming back out, because a lot of the older ways, you could secretly tell it which business it was coming from. This is hiding that away to make sure it looks definitely like it's a singular business as it leaves the estate. Okay, next thing, again, I won't show you this just because it's more Dynamics Marketing based, but their form designer and lead capture designer in terms of how you embed it in websites has just been improved, and also it's getting a level of AI that will know which data it has already collected from an individual, therefore not to ask them again. So it's more to do with user adoption and simplifying the user journey. If we already know a bunch of these questions and we deem we don't want to verify that answer, we don't need to display it. So you could create a form that's really complicated, but based on who's hitting that form, we could automatically hide them based on that person. So again, normally forms are conditional based on, now it knows who the person is and can hide and show. Again, it's just more about user adoption as we're kind of going through than anything else.
Might be worth mentioning, James, that Dynamics Marketing is the Microsoft component, the marketing automation component that comes with Dynamics, or it's within the Dynamics platform. So it competes with maybe some of the solutions you already use out there in the marketplace, like .digital or Click Dimensions or even MailChimp. So it's Microsoft's embedded marketing solution that competes with those products. Yeah. And it's becoming stronger and stronger. So this kind of add on every 6 months makes it even better.
It does, and again, just other improvements in marketing journeys. Again, it's Microsoft product, we're talking about Microsoft roadmap, so it's in here. But now we've got the ability of doing much more gated control within a marketing journey, and also offloading mid-journey to sequences in CRM. So what I mean by that is we can, within a journey now, define a sequence needs to happen, and a sequence is something for a physical human to do. So it could be they've clicked on this link, they've done this, they've done that. Therefore, the sequence could wake up for an internal staff member to maybe email them directly, maybe call them or book an appointment. So it's a hybrid link between mass mailing, mass marketing, and actually they've done these 5 actions. Therefore, this person, a real human, should interact with them. And that's the kind of difference, is it's doing that level of interaction to give us a bit more control. It's also, sorry,
Jane. How will a human know to interact? Will it be a task list or a notification?
Yeah, so we'll create a sequence which is a predefined set of activities.
And they'll get notified in some way.
They'll get notified as well, yeah.
Right.
Okay, this is the geekiest one I like, and it's not out till March. Like I said, a wave is a very long wave, so we don't get to play with this till November. We don't get to actually have it released until March 2023. And this is very interesting for, it is sales focused, but it has really interesting scenarios around major donor management and inbound grant bidding in terms of non-profits, or just big corporate pitches in our commercial world. But effectively here, we're going to get the context of a dashboard in Teams, which is a unification of all of your Outlook interactions, all of your Teams interactions, all of your Dynamics 365 interactions. So effectively, we know that this client, we're asking for this amount of money, we're doing this. It's then bringing in all that correspondence. If you sent a pitch deck, if you sent proposals or concept notes, it's going to bring it all into a single pane of glass. Then on top of that, use an AI model to work out how we're doing. Are we talking to them enough? Are we talking to them too much? So it's unifying all the technologies together. So it's unifying Teams, SharePoint, Dynamics 365, Outlook, and Viva Sales to give you this AI-based view of how we're dealing with an organization. So it could be amazing, or it could be doesn't quite land first time around, but it's initial glances, it looks really, really interesting in terms of what it could be, what we could achieve with this, in terms of understanding an organization and how we deal with them. Okay, and next thing is off the back of that is we now have 2 different clients we can be using within Outlook. Yeah, so we're used to the Dynamics 365 email client. What they've also now released is the Viva Sales client, and Viva Sales is a agnostic Outlook add-in that can talk to both Dynamics 365 and Salesforce, believe it or not. And what it's doing, it's using, and it's going to display your Dynamics 365 data and also display stuff that's going on within the wider ecosystem. So what I mean by that is it's not just looking in CRM now, it's going to be looking in old activities that were never tracked in CRM or old appointments. And it's going to be watching for you ignoring them. And then that's going to be included in the Viva Sales AI module that you get now. I imagine most people get like a Viva email each morning in Office 365 that they probably delete. They're trying to enhance that Viva engine to now understand who is a customer and who is just somebody emailing you, to make sure you're interacting with them in different ways. And that's where it's coming to. So Viva Sales is going to be their brand of AI-based interactions, but it's just getting a different UI, a different look and feel. In preview, out in a couple of months, and it's going to be a conscious decision whether you prefer the look and feel of this or whether you prefer the Dynamics 365 Outlook add-in. You can have both installed, but you need to work out what's best for yourself. Okay, and Daryl, this should hopefully clear up what I was talking about a minute ago in terms of sequences off the back of journeys. Yeah. So sales sequences can be independent. They're not part of Dynamics 365. They're part of core product. But what a sales sequence is, think of it as a bit like a business process flow, but in terms of the activities you need to undertake. So rather than building the activities into the business process flow on the top of the screen, if you look in the middle of the screen now, we have got a series of things we should really do. We should really email them to say who we are. We should really call them. We should really book a meeting. So it's suggesting the things that should take place to potentially nurture somebody. And this is applicable in both lead and opportunity and account and contact at the moment. So it could just be a volunteer nurture journey. It could be this person signed up as a volunteer, therefore I should do this step, then that step, then call them, then do that. So it could just be all of the activities that need to happen, and it's going to be reminding you, nagging you. So it's not putting them in as activities that are overdue, it's putting them in as suggestions that convert into activities. So again, it's just a different way of visualizing it, but there's some nice functionality in there as we kind of go through.
So this is bringing the AI capability into the CRM essentially.
Yes, just that. So it's just kind of, it's suggesting the stuff that needs to happen. And then ironically, if you look here, I'm actually in my Sales Accelerator dashboard at the moment, and that second column on my screen here is all the stuff I haven't done yet. So because it's in a sequence, I'll then get a list of all the things I haven't done. Yeah, and the nice thing is, it takes you back in context of the record, not the action. So it's not taking you straight to a phone call record, it's taking you to the lead account contact opportunity and telling you you should have called them. So you're in context of what's going on. So the context is a lot better around what you're working with. Okay, and now, Daryl, I think it's over to you.
Okay. Thanks, James. Just before I wrap it up really with just a list of events coming up, are there any other questions? I've been keeping an eye on the question board. Sometimes some of the newer stuff, it does come into a CRM solution. Of course, it's very sales orientated or opportunity or pipeline orientated. The trick over time would be for us to say, okay, how useful will that be in the world that we live in, primarily the charity and NFP sector? And eventually we do find uses for some of these newer capabilities, like that AI stuff that will probably feature quite predominantly over the next few months and years. And so just to keep an eye on those kind of things, we do these kind of events like today, but also then face-to-face events and so on and so forth. And what's on the screen there in front of you are a number of the events that are coming up specific to the charity sector, and again, specifically around Dynamics CRM in the charity sector, starting with an event here in Dublin, taking place next week on the 15th. The Charities Institute of Ireland are holding their annual conference and leadership summit here in the city centre, and James is coming over and we'll be presenting at that, and we'll have a booth there, so just something to look out for. And again, James will be covering an awful lot of what you guys know us for in relation to bringing solutions to the NFP sector. We don't just work with the NFP sector, so the next webinar really is, again, talking about Dynamics 365, but more for our commercial prospects and customers, those in standard commercial industries. So it's out there on the 20th. Again, might be something you're interested in, just to see how the solution might work for other types of businesses. Then we're back into the NFP Charity Finance Summit. I think that's London-based. Jenny or James, can you confirm that?
The virtual. It's the charity summit is London.
Finance?
Yes, it's London, yeah.
London, right. So details on that will be on our website. And then we're into our annual customer day, our customer event, because it's over 2 days. And this is where we have sessions like what we've just gone through, but sessions on many topics on the business solutions that we provide. So the first day does tend to focus on our ERP, our finance solutions, again, across both sectors, so NFP and other. But on the 13th, then the session then focuses more on Dynamics 365 sales, Dynamics 365 Power Apps, and so on and so forth. Again, what we've seen here today, but also many topics around or within that umbrella of products. So look, we do encourage participation. It is, again, online. You can dip in and dip out based on the actual presentation that we're running at the time. We have and will be releasing an agenda, so you can look to see in advance what will be of interest. So look, register, and then, like I say, dip in, dip out to the sessions that you're particularly interested in. So watch out for communications on that over the next few weeks from us. Essentially 2-day event, but for the audience here, that second day is probably the one that's more important. So keep an eye out for that. And that's it. That's what we've covered, what we want to cover today. I've given you back a little bit of time. So unless there's any other questions, which I I don't see come rolling in. I just want to say thank you all very much for giving us your time today and attending this event. Thank you.